whether the House and Senate will approve military action in Syria is the chairman of the House Select Committee on Intelligence, Michigan Republican Mike Rogers. Mr. Chairman, it is great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Well, glad to be here, Kate. Great to see you as well.
Oh, thank you so much. So we've got these big poll numbers out this morning I want to talk with you about because it really shows that the American people are sending a pretty clear, loud message to Congress this morning. Nearly 6 in 10 Americans say Congress should not authorize a strike against Syria. With that in mind, do you think the votes are there in either chamber at this moment?
Oh, not today. They're certainly not here today, Kate. That's that's certainly the issue. And on something as important as national security, and believe me, I understand why people are skeptical. I'm skeptical at this point. But we have to come back here, I think, and then talk about what is the U.S. national security interests. If we're just punishing someone for using chemical weapons and then disappearing, I think it's not a great plan. A, and B, it's not a great message. Here's what we need to do. We need to understand that the use of those chemical weapons is a serious problem. We have other nations, North Korea, Iran, others that we believe have stockpiles, at least some stockpiles, of chemical weapons. So their use, and by the way, this was an escalation of use. The British think it was 14 times. This happened to be the biggest because there was no earlier intervention or no pressure for him or no consequence for him using it earlier than that. So we've seen human nature here. If he can use it to his advantage, he will. This sends a pretty important message to North Korea and Iran. If they can use it to their advantage and there's no consequence, they likely will at some point. So we need to say, all right, we're going to fix this problem of his use of chemical weapons. How does the United States secure those chemical weapons after this to make sure that they don't fall in the wrong hands? And the next step up, this isn't really a civil war, it's a proxy war with Iran and Russia, and it's turning into a regional conflict. All of that has national security consequences for the United States.
I hear you saying that, but I'll tell you, when we look at these poll numbers, Mr. Chairman, I don't think the American people clearly don't hear that, believe that, or don't know that on some level. When you ask them the question of would U.S. airstrikes against Syria achieve a significant goal for the U.S., 72% say no. They don't think it's worth it for the United States to be getting involved with this fight. I want to know what does that tell you? And I think an important question is, do you think when you see that poll number that the president can do anything to sway public opinion when he speaks to the nation tomorrow night?
Well, here's the problem. He started this debate basically today, this week. So he hasn't had any national or foreign policy speeches really to speak of in the last 5 years. He hasn't really talked about Syria in a meaningful way with any depth of understanding of how it impacts the United States at all. He has very poor relations with members of Congress, of both parties, by the way. They're completely disengaged. And so they're coming in and asking for a very big thing without allowing, I think, Americans and most members of Congress who don't sit on national security committees to understand the broader impact of what's going on in Syria. And so, listen, by the way, he announced it on a Saturday and then left for a week. And so you couldn't do this in a worse way, in my opinion, but we find ourselves where we are. So what I hope happens this week is that we have that dialogue and that discussion and that debate, as we should, as members of Congress, about national security issues. And that means we will get some classified information that our constituents won't have access to. So that's why they send us here, to take a look at that, to take a look at the consequences of doing something and the consequences of not doing something. And believe me, there are consequences for not doing something. We better have that discussion in a way that allows each member to come to their own conclusion about what is the United States national security interest on a bigger scope. And I think hopefully that can happen this week.
And we know the administration keeps saying this is not Iraq, this is not Afghanistan, and this is not Libya. But you know that people are very skeptical post-Iraq about trusting, just on face value, the intelligence that they're hearing as an argument for a military action. You know, it's a subject of an Associated Press piece over the weekend that there's a lack of concrete evidence linking this chemical weapons attack to the Assad regime. I know there's classified information and you're privy to it. There's no question in your mind that it was Assad, but do you think the American people deserve to know more, deserve to see that intelligence, deserve to see that evidence before the U.S. goes in?
Well, I think we ought to provide as much as we can, but remember, some of the ways this information intelligence is collected is important to protect so that we can continue to get information and intelligence about what's happening in Syria. So that we can do in classified settings,
right, but
and
don't
we
you
should.
think the American people deserve to know more? Because you can see in our public opinion polls, they're not believing what the president, the administration are saying at this point.
Well, the president has a huge credibility problem. I get that, and it's real. And I'm, as I said, I'm a little skeptical until you go through this process. The good news is people who are getting exposed to the classified reports, Republicans and Democrats, have come out and said, you know, yep, I get the chemical weapons thing. It's not just about the use of chemical weapons. I don't think that's where people's problem are. They are very skeptical about moving forward for a couple of reasons. One, they really don't understand, nor has it been defined, what is the United States' national security interest. I happen to think they're there, but the president certainly hasn't talked about it at all, and that's causing this problem. No one can see, well, if we do this, for what gain? For what is the end game? What is the mission? Here's my hope. If Congress came in and gave a huge authorization for the president, said you can do this, you don't have to fire one missile. You go down and lay it down and say, listen, bad things are going to happen. You're either going to negotiate now, or guess what? Something really bad is going to happen. Right now, if we do this, we eliminate ourselves, the United States' ability to sit down and force a negotiated settlement to this that protects our national security interests by protecting those chemical stockpiles and sophisticated conventional weapons from falling into the hands of what has become a jihadist magnet from all over the world, including the United States, by the way, in Syria.
Now, Mr. Chairman, let me just ask you one quick final question. Do you think the president should go ahead, because I know you said prior to action, do you think the president should go ahead if he does not win approval in the House of Representatives?
Absolutely not. I think that would be a horrible mistake, and I would strongly recommend to the administration that they not move forward if you can't win enough votes and confidence in the United States Congress.
All right. Mr. Chairman, great to see you. Thank you so much. A big week ahead for you and a big week ahead for the president. We'll be leaning on you for more information. Thank you. Great to see you.
Thanks, Kate.